YOLO, it's time for another fermented malt beverage. And right now it is the Death by Coconut from Oskar Blues. A coconut chocolate porter. They call it an Irish porter. So that probably means it's not very strong and overly roasty and bitter. Even though it's 6.5%, which I think is stronger than most Irish porter styles, but I honestly haven't had too many things that call themselves Irish porters. But I have had other coconut chocolate stout, actually a couple. Well, I guess the Jack's Abbey Framing Hammer is a Baltic lager. They use lager yeast, but they do have one made with cocoa nibs and coconut that is my favorite of all the different variants of Framing Hammer. And that one's not too sweet, but it's got pretty clear coconut chocolate, but not overwhelming coconut chocolate. The other one I've had is the Wormtown Norm, which that one is actually an oatmeal stout. And I believe it was like 6.8% alcohol, which is close to this one. This is 6.5. And I like that one a lot, I remembered, but I don't believe, they don't at least advertise this as having any oatmeal or oats in it or being an oatmeal stout. They call it a porter. So we'll see what happens with it. Even though I do love the oats, let's see if this one can just bring out enough of that secret coconut without being too much like suntan lotion. Yeah, not too super dark. You can see through the pour really pretty well. In the glass, it's pretty dark, but with the edges are deep ruby brown. And the head is pretty tan. Maybe a little bit more than tan. Definitely darker than beige, though. Looks like there's a good amount of carbonation. The head's staying in there pretty well at first. It looks very nice and thick and creamy. Ooh, and the aroma smells like a Mounds bar. You can actually smell straight up nice toasted coconut, almost like from some cake or something. I don't really think it's much like suntan lotion. I mean, anything that has coconut will remind you of coconut suntan lotion a teeny bit because it just has that same flavor. This one has chocolate in it too. It smells very good. It smells rather sweet. Not extremely roasty. Definitely more of a mocha and not straight up espresso. They say they age it on dried coconut and dark chocolate. And definitely dark chocolate's coming through. But the coconut always has this interesting sort of milky, creamy smell and flavor to it that makes it almost a sort of milky chocolate, but the roast brings it back to a nice dark, I think. Not super sweet and full-bodied, surprisingly. Very, those just like a dessert beer. I would not probably want to have this with some savory meal, unless you're doing something interesting like coconut shrimp or some sort of mole or chocolate marinated steak or something. Otherwise, this would not go well with, like, some rosemary salmon. Just be odd. Yeah, I'm surprised it's 6.5%. Seems like it would be a little lower than that. There's not much burn. Just a touch of heat in the back of the throat. And the flavor matches the aroma pretty clearly. It's more textured and grainy on the tongue than creamy. It's definitely not really that velvety, like an oatmeal stout would be, which I miss a little bit. But it does get across the clear coconut chocolate flavors without being super sweet and syrupy very well. It smells definitely sweeter than I think it ends up being on your tongue. It's almost full, almost creamy. And the finish is actually a little bit tangy, almost reminds me of a dark Belgian beer. There's a little bit of dark fruits like dates and figs in there. And the finish with some like chalky dark chocolate. A little bit of coconut, but the coconut never completely takes over, I would say. And pretty low bitterness, but as I said, not too sweet, so it ends up being pretty quaffable. Any more bitterness, and I think the flavors would be a little muted and would bring out sort of the roasty aspect a little bit more. It just nails kind of bittersweet. It's exactly the flavors that come out from this beer. I think I like the aroma maybe a little bit more than the taste, actually. Well, it's very enjoyable. Not my favorite in the world, but I like the way they pull it off. I think the Wormtown Norm is still my favorite coconut chocolate beer. I remember liking that a lot because of the oats. And it's kind of hard to compare this with something like the big framing bourbon barrel-aged framing hammer with coconut and chocolate, because that's 10% alcohol and there's a lot more going on in that one. I wonder how this would be in a few months, though. This is canned on October 23rd, and today is October 11th, or November 11th. So all the aromas are still pretty fresh. I doubt this would be very good to age. It would just turn into a sort of bland or stout and dry out even more. I think I'm going to go with another 7.75 or something like this for this guy. I did not die by coconut at all. And maybe I'll just buy another one of these. We'll see.